Good morning, students. For 10th standard, we are going to start with the sense organ eye. Now, before we begin study the structure of the study about the structure of the eye, let us first discuss about the different types of sense organs that we have in our body. We know that there are 5 sense organs: the eye, the nose, the tongue, the ear, and the skin. Skin we have studied mostly in 9th standard. So basically we'll study about eye and ear. These are the two things which you have in the 10th standard portion. So we'll study in details about the eye and the ear. We'll know a little bit about the nose and tongue also. Now before studying the external features of the eye, you know that the eye has a structure more out like this. It has the eyelids. You have 2 eyelids. The upper eyelid is here and the lower eyelid is here. And we have a third eyelid which is a vestigial organ which is called the nictitating membrane. In case of the vertebrates, some vertebrates have the nictitating membrane or the third eyelid complete, but in human being it has become vestigial. So if you see in the corner of the eye, there is a yellow colored membrane, the remnants of the yellow colored membrane, that is the nictitating membrane, which is a vestige there, because that has no function in the human body. In birds you will find them, in certain reptiles you will find them, which protects the eye from like in the ear from dust or water like this. Now we have the eyelashes also. So eyelashes, eyelids, they are protective organ. On the right hand corner there is a gland called the lacrimal gland. This lacrimal gland is connected with 6 small ducts and they drain a fluid which is called the lacrimal fluid. Now this lacrimal fluid is a little bit salty fluid which contains mostly certain types of enzymes called lysozyme, which are bactericidal. They kill the bacteria. But continuously as it flows into the eye, on the surface of the eye, it drains away the dust and the dirt as well as the germs through a duct called the nasolacrimal duct, which exits in the nose region. So sometimes you must have felt that when eye drop is given, you can feel the bitterness of that medicine in the mouth because it flows through this nasolacrimal fluid into the nose and towards the pharynx region or in the taste bud region. Now this is the the eye in the front. You have a shield like this, like a membrane which is called the iris, and there is a small aperture which is called the pupil. The pupil can increase in size in the diameter and also decrease. It increases in size in darkness and decreases during in the light condition. This is to control the amount of light. So there are sets of muscles here which are called the circular muscles and the radial muscles, which can contract and expand, which can control the iris, the lengthening of the iris to reduce the size of the pupil, or shortening of the iris to increase the aperture of the pupil. So basically this is controlling the entry of the light so that much light does not enter into the eye because it can harm the retina and other structures. So this is about the external structure of the eye. Now besides this you have the eyebrows, which generally drains the sweat from your forehead to the side, protects the eye. Eyelashes is also a protective organ. Lacrimal gland is also a type of protective organ which is secretes that bactericidal fluid called the lacrimal fluid and the nictitating membrane. There is a type of glands here on the lower and the upper eyelids. These are called the meibomian glands. This gland secretes an oily fluid which helps the eyelid to smoothly move on the surface of the eye. So that gland is called the meibomian gland. And sometimes the meibomian gland is infected, then there is a swelling or there is a type of pustule formed in the eye that is called the stye. So you must know this. The stye is actually an infection of the meibomian glands. Now let us go to find out the anatomy of the eye. The eye is located inside a bony socket or the orbit of the skull. So it is attached here by 6 sets of muscles. These muscles are connected by certain nerves of the cranial nerves like the trochlear nerves, and this trochlear nerves and the other nerves they help in rotation of the eye or the movement of the eye from left to right, or you can rotate the eye, move the eye up and down. So these muscles are attached at the exterior end of the sclera which is the connective tissue to the orbit. Now, the outermost structure is called the sclera or the scleroid. This is a type of connective tissue, a fibrous connective tissue which protects the eye from any type of injury. The second layer of the eye, which is called the choroid. This choroid is a very vascular tissue which contains pigment. It is colored, and the color of your iris is very much matching to this choroid layer, and this choroid layer almost innervates this part here till the suspensory ligament. Now, the third layer, which encompasses 2/3 of the back side of the eye, this is called the retina. You can see this shaded. Now, this contains the photosensitive cells, the rods and the cones. The rods, they are stimulated in the dim light, and the cones, they are stimulated in the bright light. These are the cells, types of sensory cells which are found on the retina. Now, this is the optic nerve. All the nerve connections from the retina is exiting from this, and this is the major sensory nerve which is called the optic nerve, which leaves here. On the retina, there is a very light sensitive region which is called the macula, and the centermost part of the macula is called the fovea centralis, which is what we call the point of the best vision, and that is called the yellow spot. Here, where the optic nerve leaves, there is a spot where no retinal cells are present. This is called the blind spot. So you must know the macula and the fovea centralis, the yellow spot, and the blind spot where the optic nerve leaves. Now, if you come to the front of the eye, you can see here, this is the part of the choroid. Here it is with the suspensory ligament is connected to the lens. This is a transparent lens, and from the this choroid layer, this membranous what you call the iris, which I was telling you, this iris hangs on the front of the lens. Now, this iris is actually, you can shorten, contract, increasing the aperture of the pupil, or increase in length, reducing the aperture of the pupil as when necessary. So, reduction of the pupil aperture takes place when we go in the bright light, so that the entry of the light is less, and it can increase when the entry of light is more, that you are sitting in a classroom, then this aperture must be greater, so that more light enters into the eye. Here we have a chamber. This chamber is called the aqueous humor chamber. It contains the fluid called aqueous humor, the front chamber, which is giving some shape to the outer surface of the eye. It also supplies nutrients and all. And the next layer is the cornea, which is the layer which is devoid of any type of blood cell. So actually, here the blood which is coming to the choroid, here it flows to the limbs and other material to supply the nutrients to the corneal cell. And since corneal cells do not have any blood cell, they do not respond to the antigen-antibody reactions. That's why in human being, the cornea can be donated from any person to any other person, where the matching of the antigen or the lymphocytic antigen that is not required, it can be given to be donated from any person to any other person, because there is no supply of blood in the cornea. The outermost layer of the cornea is, there is a very thin layer of epithelial cell which is called the conjunctiva, and this conjunctiva is just a protection of the cornea, so the cornea doesn't get damaged, because it is a very sensitive organ, and the conjunctiva sometimes get infected with certain types of viruses which we call conjunctivitis. So infection of the conjunctiva is called the conjunctivitis. Now, if you see the posterior of the lens, here there is a big chamber. This chamber is a vitreous chamber, and the vitreous chamber is full of a jelly-like substance which is transparent, and this is called the vitreous humor. So this is aqueous humor, which is more fluid, more liquid, and this is more viscous, more jelly-like. That's why it's called the vitreous humor. So they maintain, vitreous humor function is, they maintain the pressure of the ocular pressure, maintains the pressure of the eye, and maintains the shape of the eyeball, because the shape of the eyeball is very much necessary for actual focusing the light on the retina. If the light is not properly focused on the retina, you know that there are certain types of problems of the eye, like the hypometropia or myopia, or other types of presbyopia. Of course, that is because of the lens. So this problem is there in the shape of the eyeball is not maintained with the vitreous humor. And there is a canal called the hyaloid canal. Through this canal, the nerves, they can come to the front of the eye, because this vitreous humor is filling, so there is a gap. Through this gap, the nerve and the blood supply comes to this. So this is more or less the structure of the eye, and you have to know the function of this. Like what is the function of the suspensory ligament here? The suspensory ligament can relax, and the lens can become thick. The suspensory ligament can become taut, it can pull when the lens becomes thin. This thinning and thickening of the lens is very much necessary because that actually changes the focus of the object. When you want to see nearby thing, the lens has to thicken, and when you want to see a far off thing, the lens has to become thin. So this thickening and thinning is done by this suspensory ligament as well as the set of muscles here in this region called the ciliary bodies. If this proper thickening and thinning of the lens are not taking place, then what happens? The focus is, the focus changes, and that leads to certain types of disorders, as I told you, like myopia and hyperopia. Because here, we cannot change the image distance. From the lens to the retina is the image distance. That length cannot change because the focal length is same, but the object distance varies. Because if the object can be placed at a nearby place, object can be placed at a far off place. So since this object distance varies, the image distance is constant. Only we can focus the object correctly on the fovea centralis of the macula if we can change the shape of the lens. So this shape of the lens is changed by the suspensory ligament and the ciliary bodies. When the ciliary bodies contract, the suspensory ligament relaxes, the lens becomes thick. That is when we visualize things in the near things, like when we read a book and all. But when the suspensory bodies, contract, the lens becomes thin. That time the ciliary body relaxes and the thinning of the lens takes place when we are to visualize things which are placed far off. So this is what we call the near accommodation and far accommodation of the eye. So this is one of the function of the eye, that near accommodation, what are the things taking place, and far accommodation, what are the things taking place. So you have to study about this near accommodation and far accommodation of the eye, how it takes place by contraction of the suspensory ligament and the contraction of the relaxation of the ciliary bodies as well written down. Go through that book, you can understand. If you have any problem, you can ask question. So that is what we are going to know all about today. If you have any problem regarding this, you can ask me, you can put up the questions, and thank you very much. And we'll, in the next chapter, next class, we'll go on to learn more about the functions, about the light adaptation and the dark adaptation of the eye, the function of the rods and the cones, and some of the diseases which are concerned with the eye. Thank you very much. Until then, take care. We'll meet in the next class.